rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. The Verona Board of Education passed a resolution at its annual reorganization meeting held on January 8th, 2019. The meeting set forth the schedule of its regular meetings, which resolution was within 7 days of passage. The schedule was sent to the Verona Cedar Grove Times, the Star Ledger, the Herald News, the Township of Verona, and the Verona Education Association. Postings of this meeting setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted in each of Verona's 6 schools, the board office, and town hall. This posting was also sent to the above newspapers, all SCA presidents, and SCA liaisons. The Verona Board of Education operates under a consent agenda format. Any board member has a right to have an item pulled to be voted upon or discussed separately. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public present. Mr. Alworth?
Here.
Mr. Day?
Here.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Here.
Mr. Elliott?
Here.
Mrs. Fresky?
Present. So, to start off, if anybody has any public comments on agenda items only, you can come up to the podium. And if not, we're gonna roll right in to our superintendent, Dr. Dionisio, and he's gonna do the first public presentation on the building A Better Verona for our referendum that we're going to be voting on in November.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to everybody in the audience who's here tonight. We do have several presentations that will be taking place over the next several weeks to educate and inform the community. Tonight is one of the first major presentations. I have presented already to our 350 odd plus staff members on the first day of school for our staff at convocation. And I have several other meetings scheduled, open forums, Q&As, as well as meeting with local stakeholder groups, constituent groups, our athletic boosters, VMPA, VFE, and all of our SCAs and other groups. So tonight we will be presenting, giving an overview. There are a lot of pictures this evening to really present to the community what the current conditions in all of our schools look like. We will be posting this video on our website, and we'll be pushing that out through social media as well, so that way we can have our community share and become educated on the topic before November 5th on Election Day. So Building a Better Verona is Referendum 2019. We started this process about a year and a half ago in really taking a look at what our needs are. This is a snapshot of our strategic plan. This is our new plan from 2018 through 2023. It has our 6 strategies. It was developed by approximately 100 community stakeholders about a year and a half ago. So we are in the second year now. And I'd like to just bring everybody's specific attention to strategy number 6, which is all around our facilities, which ties in directly to the work that we want to be doing and that we, quite frankly, need to do with our referendum. Specifically under strategy 6, with providing upgraded technology and sustainable facilities, the sustainable facilities piece is the one that we really need. Result 3 and 4 are the ones that I would like to attract everybody's attention to. So result number 3 is invest in safe, secure, and enduring school grounds and facilities. We have 6 buildings that I will provide a little bit of an overview as to how old each of those are in a few minutes. And result number 4 is to continue to monitor, focus on our investments and planning to further strengthen the safety and the security of our schools. So we do quite a bit of that work in partnership with the Verona Police Department, first responders, with our amazing faculty, but we also cannot neglect the physical infrastructure of all of our buildings and how that plays in keeping our students and our staff and our community safe. Our buildings are utilized from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. every single day, 4 p.m. with our students and our staff, and then every building is utilized from 3 or 4 p.m. into the late hours of the evening with all of our community events. So it's really important to make sure that we're continuously taking a look at what our needs are and where we need to go and move. So to give a little bit of a perspective, We have very old buildings. Several of our buildings are either 100 years old or knocking on the door. And with that comes the need to continuously look at what improvements we have to make in order to keep up with the facilities. Before we get into the referendum, I would like to say that both out of the operating budget and out of our maintenance or capital reserve accounts, our team does an incredible job of not only maintaining the day-to-day on an annual basis, but also carrying out improvements, whether it's painting stairwells or the front entry of a facade, doing roof repairs when needed, landscaping, painting classrooms, hallways, repairs. We do quite a bit of work with contractors when the scope of work exceeds what our maintenance department can do. So this is just a little bit of an overview of what has happened over the past 6 or 8 months with our team and with our partnership with some contractors. And these are all manageable to a certain extent within our operating budget or our maintenance and capital reserve. So we're looking at items that we can afford to do, but the scale of work that we're going to be talking about tonight with a referendum is well beyond being able to pay for out of an operating budget. So therefore, we need to really go out to the taxpayer for capital improvement referendum. And that's the way we can present to the community what the needs are, why we need these improvements, an estimation of what they will cost, and then we put that out to a question to the community in order to obtain approval. And if we obtain approval, we'll be able to bond the taxpayer so that way we can carry out that project, as we've done with several very successful referendum projects over the past 15 years or so. So a little bit of background and perspective for folks who perhaps may not be familiar with the history with capital improvements here in Verona. So back in 2005, the Board of Education and the administration at the time carried out an audit with the architects and engineers to identify what all of the needs were in Verona in 2005, right? Nearly 15 years ago. At that time, the report that came...
Don't make it sound like it was so long ago.
I'm sorry?
Don't make it sound like it was so long ago.
And it goes fast. It sure goes fast. And at that time, $67 million in improvements were needed. The referendum that was approved was for $33 million of the highest priorities, and that work and that project was successfully completed across all schools in Verona. In 2014, $12 million of the highest priorities were carried out, and that was approved. Now that referendum was actually slightly larger. It was closer to $17 million, but approximately $5 million was towards the athletic facility. So you'll see up there, it says excluding the athletic fields. And the reason I did that is to provide some context, because that athletic facility, a number of $5 million, was not originally included in the $67 million. So if you take all of those numbers and go down to the bottom of this screen, you'll see the 67 minus the 33 minus the 12, and you end up with $22 million of needs that are had still not been addressed. And if you fast forward today, 15 years later, and account for the cost of inflation, plus account for continuously aging facilities and additional needs, you get to a point where we need to continuously evolve as to how we're going to carry out some of these projects. So we work closely with our administration, with our architects and engineers, going throughout the district, getting perspective as to what the things are that we need to do, and then we arrive at, after a lot of feedback and many discussions, where we are today. So we will have referendum question 1 and referendum question 2, which I will go into more detail over in the next half hour or so. And you see them here with some costs. I will discuss costs again later on as we go through the project. So right now we are in the educate and inform community phase over the next 2 months or so. November 5th is big election day, so we encourage everyone, whether it's it's presentations that are posted on social media, shared out through email, in the newspapers, online, please encourage people to share the information so people can become informed and educated citizens on election day. If that question is approved, we will then go immediately into the design process, November, December, January, and February, with the goal of going out to bid at the ideal time at around February, at the latest probably March, with the hopes of then being able to initiate construction summer of 2020. We would do all of that in conjunction with our architects and engineers, AECOM. I won't read all of this. This will all be posted on our website and shared online, but it does go through each school as to what each building would receive as part of the project. You will see many of the issues overlap across all of the schools. So, for example, roofing is a serious concern. Stage rigging will be in all of the schools as well. So roofing, stage rigging, either repair or replacement of windows will occur in every building. Replacing assembly doors, we'll talk about those in a moment, that will occur in every building. Rekeying of interior classroom doors will be at Verona High School and the middle school. We have a number of other items that vary from school to school based on their unique needs. Many of the schools will get upgrades or complete overhaul of the phone and sound system from a security standpoint. Fire detection upgrades across almost all schools, and then air conditioning slash cooling and heating, which we'll get into in a little bit. So we have Verona High School, we have HBW, Brookdale Avenue, Forest, FN Brown, and Lanning Avenue School. Ms. Freschi, did you have a question?
No, I was gonna make a comment. Ms. Presco, Mr. Day, and myself went to a county meeting the other night, and it was all focused around safety, and the rekeying was something that they were speaking of as really an important issue, so I'm really happy to see that in there.
Great. We'll go into a little bit more of what that actually means so the taxpayer has an understanding of why that's important.
Okay.
So first, we'll talk about roofing. Roofing will occur in every single building across the whole district. There will not be one roof that would be untouched. But important to note as well, when we replace these roofs, the amount of insulation will increase dramatically when we replace the roofs. And that's a really major thing, right? Because that will allow us to be much more energy efficient and allow us to also be able to retain not only heat in the winter, but the cool air in the warmer months. So this will give you an indication of what some of the conditions look like in our buildings. So this is a stairwell in FN Brown. I could have put up 100 pictures that look similar to this across all of our buildings. I just gave you I'm going to give you a little bit of a snapshot as to what we're looking at here. And naturally, this is all a result of our roofs, which are currently 22 years old, with a life expectancy of 20 years old. So it's just part of the natural cycle, just like on our homes, when we have to replace these roofs. Our roofs are holding water, which roofs will hold water, but they should not be holding this much water. And it's problematic to be holding water this time of year. It's especially problematic in the winter with freezing and refreezing and the effect that that will have on the actual roof structure. Therefore, obviously causing these leaks and damage, and we've repaired the roofs, and I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like, but that's only a temporary fix. Repair to the inside of the building, we've attempted in areas, but it's hard to repair things where the roof just continuously leaks, and quite honestly, we're throwing good money away by doing it that way. We have to really solve the problem. So, this is August 7th, 2019 at Verona High School, right outside the music wing. It's in the music hallway back here. It's been repaired numerous times, and this was a rainstorm that came in, and it was significant rain, but our roofs are not supposed to be doing that, as we all know. I'll show you that again, because it's quite an amazing thing to see that was happening in our buildings. And we've contracted And we have a great relationship with a roofing contractor that deals with these kinds of repairs. But as you repair one area, the water just then migrates to another area of deteriorated roof, and the water will come and find its way in. You can see here from the age of our roofs and the poor drainage that we have plant life growing at this point on the roof.
So that makes it more of a green school? Or?
I wish I could say that. That was not our intent. But we definitely are trapping and holding on to way too much water, and we really need to repair this. You can see this is a significant patch job. So it's not like we're not fixing roofs, we are. And this is costing tens of thousands of dollars. And we can't be in a position where we're just continuously patching. It's necessary because we have to keep the water out, but we really just need to replace everything. This is that area where we saw the water coming in the hallway at in the music wing. So our team temporarily put up there a tarp from Home Depot, and we tarred it down just to keep the water out. This is what a roof should and would look like. And this is another roof. And these roofs that I'm showing you here, I did not pull these pictures online somewhere. They're actually from our architect and engineer. These are two projects that they've completed and conducted. So this is what we would expect when we complete our project.
Would ours be the white like that as well?
We are looking at the white because of being able to reflect the heat. So that would all become part of the design process. But we did meet with roofing contractors to just begin to understand what the materials are that are out there and the pros and cons, because you were there for that meeting, through our facilities committee. More damage to the interior of the building and classrooms. And now we move on to playgrounds. So our playgrounds at our 4 elementary schools are over 20 years old, and as part of the natural cycle of replacement, they are at a point now where they not only need to be replaced because of aesthetics, but because of functionality and because of safety issues. So we'll go through a little bit of what it looks like at, this is the back of FN Brown. So this is on the FN Brown playground, taking a picture of the back of the school, and you see that the chains are rusted. We have, as I go through, swings that are broken. We have since then replaced these components, but it doesn't change the fact that the structure is rusting and really needs to be replaced. We have a damaged seat. It's just old. This is at Forest Avenue School. And then this is what our playgrounds could look like. With our playgrounds, with resurfacing, this is, as you know, over at Verona Park. I've spoken with Arterial Streets, which is here in Montclair. They do amazing work. Doesn't mean that they would do our work. And when we would be designing these playgrounds, we would have our principals at each of the schools with our SCA, the parent group, be able to provide feedback and input as to what these spaces could look like, because they will look slightly different at each of the schools, depending on what each school's needs are. This is at Brookdale Avenue School, more rusting component parts, missing monkey bars. Some of the components are very difficult to replace, so it's time for us to address this issue at this point. Masonry and railings. One of the most significant areas for masonry repair is not only just repointing the cement work as we would throughout the district in specific areas, but this, for example, is a chimney that most people would never see. It's on the top of HBW, and I know from the picture it's difficult to see, which is why I put that yellow arrow. I even adjusted and tried to play with the brightness. It's much easier to see on my computer monitor, but there is a significant crack that follows all the way down. This chimney needs to actually be taken down and then rebuilt right back up. I'm showing you this because that water is seeping in and creating more damage in the brickwork. And we have these similar issues on a smaller scale throughout the district. And we also have areas that from a safety standpoint, we also want to add railings for our students, for our staff, and for our community members as they visit our schools. Stage rigging. So in the rafters above the stage of each of our schools, not just VHS, not HBW, just HBW, but all of our schools, there's stage rigging. And for those folks who don't know what stage rigging is if you were standing on stage and you were looking up, you would see metalwork that actually holds up several significant components that allow us to have the beautiful stages for our performances and the work that our kids and our teachers do. So they hold up especially the curtains, which are very, very heavy, but they also hold up lighting, and they also hold up, in some instances, sound systems, speakers. So there was nothing wrong with this type of stage rigging years ago when it was installed, but by today's safety standards and the expectations that we have, this is something that our architects and engineers have stressed really needs to be replaced. So we really want to address this issue, and this will be addressed at every single school. Here's another picture of what that looks like. Windows. Throughout our district, we have a number of schools that, fortunately, all they need is window repairs. So that's the good news. But we do have several schools that require complete replacement. The reason they require replacement is because, for example, this picture, you see that the window is actually on an angle. So is it operational? It is. It's not entirely safe, and we don't want our staff and students near a window like that. There are other windows that cannot be opened whatsoever. So it's problematic for a number of reasons. Most importantly, air ventilation and airflow within the classrooms, especially on hot days. And we want to really be able to address these items. So every school will have a line item to do repairs. We did an audit of all of our school windows. And I believe it's 2 of our schools will have complete replacement of windows in those classrooms and every area of the building. The facade and gutters on our schools, especially HBW and FN Brown, needs special attention. So here you see HBW, a lot of woodwork, beautiful woodwork actually, but completely deteriorating, rotted from the weather, from the water, from damage that has been done over the years. Quite honestly, well beyond repair. You can't even scrape it down and repaint it because it will not hold. We really need to just replace much of this work.
Another question. When they go to replace like that, like you said, it's very beautiful and it adds to the character and the facade, the age of the buildings. Is it going to be replaced like that, or are we gonna get a very clean, generic, more modern look?
So because the buildings are so beautiful and naturally built a long time ago, we want to maintain the integrity of how these buildings look.
That's what I was hoping to hear.
So the non-negotiable will be replacing it so it looks the same. The area where we have some latitude, pending what the price comes back on, is what types of materials we will use. So the more cost-effective way is to replace it with woodwork. Long-term, if we could replace it with something that looks the same, but we replace it with a composite material that can hold up against the elements, that would make the most sense. So that when we design the project and we go out, we really want to be able to do this in a way where we can receive pricing from competitive contractors and see how low that pricing comes in and if we can pull off that composite material. Because we think for the long term, it would be a much wiser decision.
But either way, we're gonna try to maintain the integrity of
Absolutely.
the look.
So this looks like this now, and we want it to look, and it will look exactly the same way with the level of detail. These are Yankee gutters, which is an old gutter system, original to the time. And the problem with it in today's standards is it holds a lot of water and moisture, as you can see, and it causes a lot of problems when there are leaks. So we would be replacing that Yankee gutter system with an updated system, but at the same time maintaining the integrity and the historic look of all of our buildings. but you see a lot of deterioration here and a lot of detail that needs to be given to each of these buildings. At HBW, we have a gym door because we only have one gymnasium there for almost 700 children. And at times, we really do need to separate out both sides based on the activities that are going on with 3 or 4 physical education teachers. So we have a door at HBW that separates it out, but it's a manual door. And the door is old, and the door is heavy. And from a safety standpoint, we really want to motorize the door. It does not mean necessarily replacing the whole door, it just means motorizing it in a way that allows it to be safer to operate. And some may ask, why are we not doing the same thing at VHS? And quite frankly, the reason for that is we have about the same number of students at VHS, but we have 2 gymnasiums, and we have a fitness center, a weight room, where we have students go. So we have more space to move students around, so we don't need to utilize and operate a door that will separate out the gym. Floor and wall tile. Floor and wall tile is specifically at Verona High School. So as you walk out, I encourage all of you, please pay attention to some of the floor tiles that are throughout. You'll see as you're walking the hallways, they're mismatched, they were repaired over time. It really takes away from trying to create an aesthetically positive environment for our students and staff. But specifically, take a look at the walls. So the tile work that's here is original to the construction of the building in 1956. And the tiles are so deteriorated, they're so broken, we have no option on replacing them because the materials just no longer exist. You may look at them and say, can't we clean them? It's actually impossible to clean it any more than we've done. They're just so old, they just need a complete replacement. We'll see some more of them here. Verona High School, this is in what we all call our new gym, right? It's no longer new, but it's the gym closest to Sampson Drive. And we're at the point where if you take a look and you see those spots that are black, the reason they're black is because the floor is so thin now at this point from sanding it over the years that if you were to set up and pull a piece of this wood out next to what it should look like, the disparity is significant. We can no longer sand the floor down. So our contractors that are doing repairs when the floor cracks are actually just filling it with an epoxy material in order to make sure that it's safe for people to be on. So this is because the floor is old. It's been sanded a number of times, and it can no longer be repaired. And that's just part of the natural evolution of aging facilities and making sure that we stay on top of these things. And we have stayed on top of these things.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we have been.
Right?
It just got to a point.
It gets to a point where we've really, if you want to look at it from this standpoint, we've really stretched out the dollar as far as you can take it. We got 22 years out of 20-year roofs, right? So we're really maximizing the taxpayers' contributions in order to operate and manage the facilities. So it's just time to improve them now. Security assembly doors. In the 2014 referendum, which we successfully completed, there were a number of security upgrades that were made then. We have our security vestibules, we had our camera system, the visitor management system in each of the buildings. We have over 120 cameras throughout the district now. A lot of exterior doors were replaced. Now I'd like to move our focus inside the building from a security standpoint. So when we say security and we say assembly doors, I want you to picture when you were in school and you were in the gymnasium. I want you to picture when you were in the auditorium, and I want you to picture when you were in the cafeteria. So when I say assembly, I mean an area where we're going to have a lot of students and staff congregate. So we all know that the world that we live in today, we have lockdown procedures and we get our kids and our staff into the classrooms as quickly as possible and lock down when there's a potential situation where we need to remain safe. The same thing holds true with our cafeterias, our gyms, and our auditoriums. So at this point, we wanna really pay specific attention to those assembly doors, and we wanna replace all of those, so that way we can lock down when necessary in those locations. So we would be looking to replace all of the doors to look something like this. And this is just an idea of what it could look like. And the locking mechanisms would have lockdown shades, it would have shades from the inside, so that way nobody can look inside of that assembly room, and it would have upgraded lock set hardware. So we wanna make sure that all of these large locations are safe for our students and staff. Rekeying classroom locks, and if this goes to what Mrs. Fresky had mentioned earlier when she was at the New Jersey School Board's meeting, I believe with Mrs. Prisco and Mr. Day. So rekeying means essentially, and we're going to be focusing our efforts this time around at VHS and HBW, not the elementary schools. And it's not because, the main focus here is because at our elementary schools, we utilize those spaces very differently than we do VHS and HBW. So let me give you a little bit of perspective. When we have a teacher who would be out, which happens every day in our schools, at Verona High School, we have a substitute who will come in. But what's different about Verona High School or HBW than the elementary schools is that our teachers at the high school and HBW travel from classroom to classroom. They're not in the same classroom necessarily all day long, which is very different than our elementary teachers. Our elementary teachers, when we have a substitute that would go in and cover for that teacher for the day, they receive the keys to the classroom, and they go into that classroom all day long. What's unique about Verona High School and HBW, and all middle schools and high schools across the country, is that we have traveling teachers. We're trying to maximize our space. And with that, we always want to make sure that the locks all match the key. And right now, we don't have that. So we want to make sure that we have a key that matches every single classroom door. So regardless of what classroom you're in, if you're a classroom teacher, you can get into any single classroom and make sure that you can open that door, just from an operational standpoint, and that you could lock it down when necessary. Along the lines of security, upgrading our phone and public announcement system, sound system, so the PA system, right? So that way we can communicate across the whole school very quickly and efficiently. So back in 2014, as part of the security measures, Verona High School did receive focus on upgrading the phone system. So there's a classroom phone for emergency purposes in every single classroom on the wall, and also an upgraded PA system. We did not have the resources at the time to do that at HBW and our elementary schools. So this is that next phase to improve safety and to make sure that we're staying on top of the upgrades that are necessary. I have to say that the response has been very positive at the high school. Teachers love the fact that they have the phones in their classrooms. It's been very, very efficient and very warranted. Also important to know is that we've also taken other measures with school security from a standpoint of utilizing Share 911, where our teachers can incorporate that now. You've probably seen some press releases on that. They could quickly call a lockdown off of their cell phones, but we really do need this added level of safety at our elementaries and our middle school now. So we'll have phones on every wall and then a new PA system in every school. So our boys and girls locker rooms, I would imagine most of the people in the audience, I know the board has seen it, but most of the people in the audience have not seen it unless you went to high school here. If you went to high school here, it looks worse than when you went to high school here.
Were they bad then?
We were told not to take our shoes off.
So
20
It's-
years ago.
the high school was built in '56, so it's about 63 years old. And HBW is even older, so I'm not exactly sure when that locker room was installed. But you'll get an idea of what it looks like. But this is one of our locker rooms.
Explain what that is though.
So what we have is You'll see across the back, you have green lockers. You have concrete blocks with wood benches. And you have a floor that at some point was painted red, or maroon, although it looks more red. And it's just peeled over the years. I'm sorry? This is actually Verona High School. This is one of the locker rooms at Verona High School. And it's a boys' locker room.
If this were smell-o-vision, do you have pictures in the shower?
So I'm gonna go through a bunch of pictures so you'll get a sense.
Yeah, oh, get ready.
Oh, yeah.
Are you saying you want a tour tonight?
I was just saying.
We will be holding tours
I just,
on September 28th and October 12th. Our Verona High School students will be giving tours of our Verona High School locker rooms here, and answering any questions around the conditions that we have. So this is the locker room at HBW. So this is one of them. This is Verona High School girls' locker room. This is Cedar Grove High School's new locker room. That's Ramapo High School up in Ramapo in Bergen County. Our architects and engineers completed this project a few years back. Beautiful work.
can I just ask?
Yes.
Again? I'm sorry. So we're looking, if I understood you correctly when you took us on a tour, to do more of an open floor plan like that as opposed to the rows without visibility.
That's absolutely correct. So
Okay.
it's hard to see from these pictures. You can see it here in the center of this photo, that bench in between lockers. Now picture 20 kids in there. It's just, in today's standards, not something that we would do from how we utilize space. The feng shui is definitely not good that way. And we would want, from a supervision standpoint, for our staff to be able to scan and see the whole room, right? You could have 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 students in there at a time. We want to make sure that we can have eyes on kids at all times. So this is an opportunity to bring it up to the 21st century standards. So you see more of here, everything's brand new, it's beautiful. But to Mrs. Fresky's point, we have discussed as a board having more of that open concept, which you do not have here, but you will see here at Ramapo High School, they decided to go that way. And you even see that their benches are movable. Right? So you can really do a lot with that space depending on what's going on. Here's another example of what it could look like. You even get to see the Verona colors in this picture. So this is a current bathroom at Verona High School in the locker rooms. I will say, speaking of bathrooms, we've done an incredible amount of work with our maintenance department on renovating bathrooms across the district. Just to give everyone an example of cost, on the lower field, if you remember, we never used to have restrooms there. And now we have those two family restrooms that are ADA compliant, and we did that recently. The reason we did not do that out of the 2014 referendum is because the estimates came back on that to be $160,000 to renovate and add bathroom facilities to an existing structure. We did it in-house for $30,000, right? Significant savings to the taxpayer. The problem is we could never, from a financial standpoint and from a manpower standpoint, be able to renovate the scale of work that needs to be completed with this referendum project. Another restroom. So these are, at one point there were mirrors above these sinks. This is actually in the girls' restroom, girls' bathroom, in the locker rooms. That's what it looks like right now. This is Indian Hills High School, which is part of the Ramapo Indian Hills School District, where they have two high schools. This is in Oakland, New Jersey, and Bergen County. Our architects completed this project as well. What we would be looking to do, and all of this will come later in the design process, is right now, if you went into the boys and girls locker rooms, especially the boys locker rooms have showers that are not utilized. And it's the old school showers where you have one big room with showers along the perimeter. We would not be installing that again in 2019, 2020. But we would be installing several stall showers as you would when you would go to a health club, a fitness center, and you would go to the bathroom, to the locker rooms, and to be able to shower. So there are times that we have our students that need to shower coming out of athletic events, or something happens and they need to use it, our staff. So we would have individual showers that would be located, and we would also have some individual changing areas for students who perhaps just don't want to change in front of a lot of other students. So they could have a little bit of privacy, they can go in there and change. So we're looking to install that as well. So just trying to think ahead as to what our needs are today. Once again, Cedar Grove Public Schools, new bathroom facility. Beautiful job, Ramapo High School, you see the shower there. ADA compliant there, right? It's very important. West Essex right up the road. Tried to give you an idea. We saw some, Glen Ridge also, they just recently did their locker rooms, did a beautiful job there as well. I think you get the point. Our athletic trainer room. So Mr. Callow, Jay Callow, does an amazing job with our athletic program. So at Verona High School, every school district requires an athletic trainer to tend to our student athletic needs, their injuries specifically. To give you an idea, he's one man, and each season he has a minimum, I just asked him for this last week to go through his data records, he has a minimum of 400 individual injuries a season. His numbers are between 1,200 to 1,400 a year, and that's been consistent over the past 5-6 years. For those of you who have children in the school system and have children in the high school participate in athletics, you probably know Mr. Callow. He's terrific. And the space that I'm going to show you, you'll get an idea of how small it is. He's trying to meet the needs of our children, and he does not have the space necessary. And then there's another area where I'd like to draw your attention to as well as we go through this. So this is his current space. It's a very small space. He has an ice machine, he has some equipment, he's maximizing every square inch. He's tucking a chair there in between the ice machine and a table where he stretches and treats our student athletes. He has 3 tables, if you see one on the left and 2 on the right, to give you an idea of how many children he would have, how many students he would have in there at a time. It's not unheard of for him to, before, during, after practice, to have 7, 10, 15 kids in a room that has 3 tables. And he can't have any rehab equipment in there either. Now, you would say, well, why is that the case? Well, the reason it's the case is because these buildings were built in 1956. And in 1956, schools did not have athletic trainers. So with the advent of really keeping up with the times and being able to have an athletic trainer, this was the only space we had available as a makeshift. It actually used to be a coach's office where there were several coaches that would have their meetings there all of the time and then meet with the kids and meet with each other. And that was shared space. And I'll remind everyone that Mr. Callow is a medical professional. He works very closely with our orthopedic doctors, with our parents, with the administration, with the students, and he needs this space. From this angle, you're looking straight at a door that goes into the boys' athletic locker room. And that was renovated probably about maybe 8 or 10 years ago or so, maybe not even that long. It could have been, which really, well, a lot of help from our booster club. The football booster club, the Fifth Downers, donated an amazing amount of time and money and resources to help renovate that space, which is utilized not just for football, but for a variety of athletic programs. So this is really important. I want you to pay attention to this. We're looking at the boys' locker room. So that's one entrance into Mr. Callow's trainer room. This is another door. It's the only other entrance into Mr. Callow's office, and that goes into a small coach's office. In that small coach's office, you'd have to come in from the gym, and once you get into that office, you go into Mr. Callow's room, or you go into boys' locker room. So the reason I say this is because I'm the father of 2 girls, and in today's standards, and any standards, I think our females deserve better. They need a space where it's set off. Our staff and our kids have handled it extremely well because of the constraints that we've had, but we really need to get to the point where we're giving not only a larger space, but we're also giving a space that has separate entrances that are unisex for all of our students. And this is just a snapshot of what it could look like. The space that we're actually talking about for Mr. Callow is, if you recall that back room that the room I showed you earlier with the red floor that was peeling, that would be converted and have some bathroom facilities there for our students, have about 6 to 8 tables, and have some rehab equipment for our students. Paving, pictures say it all. A lot of this work would be at Lanning Elementary School. Part of the work would be at Verona High School, the parking lot, the upper lot where we did not renovate it last time in 2014 because at the time it did not need it. We stretched out a few more years out of it. That was the right thing to do then, and now we have some work that needs to get done. We all know about HBW's track. In 2014, we renovated that track, but it was just a resurface, and that was to do some drainage work and to resurface it. So think about it like your roof on your home. You get to the point where you add the 3rd layer of roof, and at that point, once that goes, it's time to take the whole roof down and repair from the bottom and work your way up. And that's where we are at this point with HBW's track. So we want to do more drainage to divert the water off that hill away from the track. And you see grass that's growing through. Go take a walk, you'll see it coming through everywhere. There are a lot of depressions in the track, which means that the base underneath, the material is deteriorating. We have our contractor cut those areas out, patch those areas, fill them in, but those are temporary patches. You could actually see them, they're discolored all throughout. So we really need to take this entire track all the way back down to its base and rebuild it from the ground up. FN Brown, we've done a lot of exterior drainage work. FN Brown parents probably know there's been a significant amount of running water, almost like a small stream that has popped up in the past year or so, back near the playground and along the back of those homes, and it actually runs right down to the Peckman River that's back there. Now, a lot of speculation is, why did this pop up in the past year and a half or so? Just take a look around as to all of the construction in the building. There's a lot of shifting of water tables and water runoff. We have a lot of construction going on over the years here in Verona, and currently we have a major project that's going on right next door in Cedar Grove, right at the top of the hill that's running down. We have utilized contractors to do some repairs. It's significantly improved the area, probably about 80 or 90% improvement, but there's still some drainage work that needs to be done, and that would be included in this referendum as well. Boiler repairs. So our boilers, in the last referendum, we did a significant amount of work on replacement. We also, in our ESIP project in 2015, Energy Savings Improvement Program, we did a lot of work then as a district, and we replaced boilers that were more energy efficient. At this point, we have a lot of life left in many of our boilers, but they look a lot like this. So this does not mean it's a complete replacement. That would be a waste of money. But we have earmarked significant amount of money that's a lot cheaper than replacement. These boilers can still have 10, 15, 20 years, some of them. So we want to address some of the areas of concern that really exceed our operating budget, so that way we can make sure that we get the full life expectancy out of them. We have some fire detection work. We want to upgrade to 2019 standards, new fire alarms, smoke sensors. From a temperature regulation cooling, this is the second question component. This is the air conditioning. I'm going to go into a little bit more though, because it's not just air conditioning. This question is contingent on the first question passing, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But what this would allow us to do, yes, provide air conditioning in all of our classrooms, in all of our buildings, in every single space where we have students and staff. But what's also important is, this is what the unit would most likely look like in every single classroom. If you haven't been to your child's back to school night yet, and you're going, or you were there and you remember what it looks like, in every classroom we have something that pretty much looks like this. Right now it's throwing out heat. It's our ventilation system. So the most cost-effective way, if the second question on air conditioning would pass, would be to go and replace these units with brand new units. The new units are not just air conditioning. They're heating, they're air conditioning, they're ventilation, and they're going to be more energy efficient as well. Which the hope would then be is that we are able to reduce our operating costs. We also would be able to apply for rebates because of energy efficiency. So it is very difficult to tell, but our architects and engineers do this kind of work all of the time. This does not include operating costs, the referendum question. That is something that Ms. Nardino, myself, and the board would have to sort out. We're doing our best to get those estimations as to what that would cost. But you would either have units that look like this, or in large-scale assembly rooms, we would have rooftop units that would, for example, in a room of this size, or in an auditorium, would have a capacity to really control the heating and the cooling for those large spaces. Yes.
And our roofs, should we need those, can support that without
Yes.
further,
Yes, we have our architect with us tonight. Mr. Sanders is here. I've asked him to come in case there are any questions that the board or the public has that I may not be able to answer. But yes, they would be able to support it. And this would be the time, if the taxpayer were to approve question number 2, to do it. Because we would be replacing our roofs.
yeah, correct.
So we would be replacing our roofs, we would be adding insulation. The standards for insulation today are 5 inches of insulation, whereas years ago we were looking at either 1 or 2 inches or no insulation in areas based on those industry standards at the time. So what's the impact? That's what a lot of people naturally are going to care about. How is this going to impact me? Sounds like all of these things are necessary. We wouldn't be putting them in front of the taxpayer if they were not necessary. The impact based on the average assessed home is $18 per month for both questions, or $217 per year. If we're looking at just question number 1, there was a slide earlier. Question number 1, if I recall correctly, was $14.50 to the average assessed home. And the second question for the HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, was $3.50 per month, or $43 a year. Referendum question 1 will be presented on November 5th. Question 1 is a total of just north of $22 million. That was the $14.50 a month. And question number 2 is contingent on question number 1 passing. So if question number 2 passes at the polls and question number 1 does not pass, neither project is completed. And for good reason. We think that all these things are important, but question number 1 is really a top priority right now. We cannot do without it. So we wanted to make sure that we are making the best decisions by our students, by our staff, and by our community. We have 2 more public presentations that are open forums. One this Saturday at 10 a.m. and then one on October 12th at 2 p.m. So that way we can try to work with everyone's schedules. I do know that I'm meeting with actually 3 SCAs here tomorrow night to present. I have meetings that are being scheduled or have already been scheduled with our athletic boosters, our coaches, VMPA, VFI on October 1st. I have many different groups that I'm going to meet with in small forums and just try to get the word out. One of the things that I would encourage folks to do is You've already seen some of them, really pushing out videos that capture the conditions. So we pushed out a video on the playgrounds, I think it was last week, and the one on the roofs the week before. We'll be doing, the next one that we're working on now is actually on the athletic facilities. So our locker rooms, our tracks, we're gonna push that out. We created a Facebook group, so that way our parents and community members that are on Facebook, we encourage you, please, 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 share, share, share. Share the information out to everyone so that everyone has it and can make an informed decision. In the next day or two, we will post this video, we will post this presentation online, we will push it out through social media. We know that our local media sources will get us the information out there so that way we can educate as many people as possible.
I just want to add as well, this pre-referendum report is now on the website. There's a tab that just says referendum. The whole thing was scanned, and I shared it out on my Facebook page, but people can go there and find it as well. And like I've said repeatedly, all 5 of us sitting at this table have a copy, and a copy lives in Dr. Dionisio's office as well.
Absolutely.
And I think it's critical everybody to get out and tell their friends and neighbors. I think I've received a lot of feedback on those videos. Have been very informative for people because people didn't realize how bad the roads were or at the playgrounds and what impact it has on the students and on our facilities right now. So I think it's very critical to have everybody know that this is, things that we need, not wants. These are needs, and very important to make sure we get this passed in November.
Yeah, I think too that the dialogue that happened leading up to this between the board members and yourself was really important because we looked at it, diced it up, tried to maybe pull things out that we didn't think were priorities, and at the end of the day, this is what we came up with. And like Mr. Day was saying, they're necessities. They are necessities.
And we definitely did trim, the board and
Yeah.
and the
trimmed down a
administration
lot.
did trim a lot of things out, not because they're not needs, but the board really tried to prioritize what we felt that the taxpayer can bear and what we need to absolutely do right now, and what we could probably hold off for maybe another 7, 8, 10 years. And these are significant needs, based on the conditions. And to Mr. Day's point, it's really hard for folks. Parents drop their children off at school. You look at the school from the outside, for the most part, they look pretty nice. But the only time most people are in the buildings are for special events like a concert or a back to school night. And you really take for granted, what the demands are, not only from a financial standpoint, but from a manpower standpoint, and how you're gonna get this work done. So the pictures really say a lot of what the conditions are. So we encourage everyone to share as much information as possible.
I'll just add a couple of comments around that. Certainly when you look at these videos and the presentation, some of these issues seem extreme or even shocking. But really this referendum is just the next phase in the strategy that we outlined almost 15 years ago when we did the needs assessment, identified, as Dr. Dionisio said, almost $67 million worth of work that really needed to be done. But we knew at the time that the district just couldn't afford that much
In one bite.
in one bite. So we developed a philosophy of trying to go out every 7, 8 years and try to tackle the next chunk of it. So we did that in 2005, we did that in 2014, and now we're doing it again. So this is not through neglect that the schools have got to this point. It's just that we're dealing now with the neglect from the previous 50 years. Because when you look at the work that the schools have done, if this passes, we'll have approved almost $75 million worth of work over 15 years, which is a tremendous amount of money. Renovation is always more expensive than new build, so we'll go down that road. But prior to that, there had been a referendum in 1996, I believe, to do the roofs and windows then, which is now what we need to tackle again because that's their life expectancy. We've exceeded it. Prior to that, no one really knows when the work last work done. Maybe the 70s, maybe the 60s. It seems unsure. I think maybe this room we're in was in the plaques up there was last time.
Decades ago.
Yeah,
It was decades ago.
And this is not going to be it. To be perfectly honest with everyone in the audience and at home, we're not going to get everything done with another $22 million. We are still had to bring the scope of work down to what we felt was palatable to the town and what the town hopefully can accept. And what we did was identify what were truly the needs. So we're hoping that that this scope of work gets us through the next maybe decade, if we're lucky. By that point, we're gonna have a big chunk of our debt falling off. Is that 2031?
2031.
2031. So it may not be quite ready to fall off by the time we have to do this again, but it should be certainly getting close. And that's when that big chunk, I think the first two are gonna fall off by that point.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and we'll have this one, but the goal again is to keep rolling another one out over a period of time so that we can get the work done and not ignore it for 50 years so it builds up like it has. But we're making progress. If we get this done, we're gonna be in pretty good shape. I mean, not to say things won't come up again, but we're gonna be in pretty good shape. So hopefully the town does see the logic behind this thinking and we can get it done.
If this passes, this is a huge component in getting us to that end goal. And like you said, it's a constant evolution. We're going to have to address issues, but this will put us in a really good position to address the most significant needs that we
Yeah,
have.
for the first time in 15 years, it'll be like, we'll have most of those items crossed off the list. And, things will certainly come up again. I mean, we're gonna need, by the time, in 2031, we'll need a new track, or a new track, we'll need a new field, there's no doubt about it. That turf field is not gonna last forever either. But that's the job, is to always look ahead and have that long-range plan and continually think about what we gotta do
And
next.
to your point, when the debt rolls off in 2031 from those previous referenda, we're able to then roll that
Right.
tax relief into
Yeah.
a new referendum and keep that cost down for the taxpayer.
And one advantage that we still have that we never anticipated we would have 15 years later is that money's still cheap, meaning that the interest rates on bonds is still very low. Relative, it was low at the time when we did it the first time, and it really hasn't moved much. So we did not think that would be the case that long ago, but we're fortunate in that it's still relatively inexpensive to borrow money.
What our financial advisors had told us is going out to referendum in November is good, because we would sell bonds in January, and that's the best time of the year to do that. That's when the rates are the best.
And when you're talking $22 million, is a fraction of a point, makes a big difference.
The other thing that I wanted to add, just so people in the public know this, that when we put the 1920 budget together and did the presentation, the average assessed home was around 430,000. So I doubt that changed very much. So you can compare, the tax impact of $217 to where your house is at. And then certainly, I think if you call Mrs. Prisco at the tax office, she can tell you exactly what it would be.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Your number is.
It's like your lucky number.
857.
Then the other question I think is important for us and the public to know, should this not pass, some of these things are safety issues, what then is the next step?
That's a great question. So, we hope that it passes. Should the question not pass in November, we have many safety issues here, from roofs, to windows, stage rigging, a number of different items here that are very problematic for us. Should it not pass, we would pretty quickly put the question back up to the public the next possible time come the new year. It would be before May. A member of our audience, I just saw them say May, it would definitely be before May. We put the question right back up. If that question fails a second time, it's important to know that I, at that point, with a Board of Education, would go to the county superintendent. And because there are a number of different safety issues, I would estimate that the safety issues are probably hovering around, out of that $22 million, probably hovering around 13 million. We would apply for approval to automatically bond the taxpayer for that $13 million, right? So we wouldn't be able to get some of the items that are there, let's ballpark say $9 million of those items, but the items that are safety issues, we would receive approval from the Department of Education that would allow us to bond the taxpayer, and the taxpayer would have to pay whatever that prorated average assessed amount is on $13 million. So for an extra $8 or $9 million, we really get to take ourselves to the next level. That's excluding the HVAC question, the second question, right? Because in totality, the total referendums are around $27 million. It was much larger, as the board had mentioned earlier, and we kind of whittled that down to what we felt was absolutely necessary at this point. That's a great question.
Yeah, I just think it's important for everybody to understand, the rollout.
And along those lines, if it does not approved in November, and we go out again in, when would be the next time? Is it January or February? It would be March. March would be the next time. Let's assume worst case scenario, it doesn't pass in March. Then we would petition the county superintendent. And then we would receive that approval. The problem is, we've just missed the boat on prime bidding season, which is around January, February. And now, you saw it's raining in our buildings today. Now we can expect to go a whole nother year out to be able to get competitive pricing. So we'll have to live with these conditions for longer, which causes all kinds of other problems in our schools. Ms. Prisco.
Dr. Dionisio, if we do another election because it didn't pass, doesn't that cost the board more money?
Excellent
to do
question.
another-
It
election?
absolutely does. Right now, that's a great question. Right now, it does not cost us anything this November, because there's already an election coming up. But if we have to do a special election, it's an estimation of about $25,000 or $30,000 to run a special election. That has to come out of the Board of Ed operating budget. So for this November election, no cost to the board. Special election, cost to the board, 25 to 30K.
And on top of that, you also have professionals that you have to pay. The architects, they have to get paid an additional fee to redesign or to put the information out there. And also bond counsel, because they're the ones that wrote the question that you'll see on the ballot. So they charge us for that too. So if we have to do it all over again, that's what we're faced with.
Yeah, there's a time cost and money cost.
Right.
Time and resources.
Good questions. I would like to, because it is a public forum and we want to be able to engage our community. If there's anybody in the audience that has any questions, perhaps anything that hasn't been addressed or any clarification that anyone needs. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Sarah Drabby, 12 Malvern. The question that I have is, even if this does pass, we now have these significantly aged roofs, and we're gonna go through a winter and a freeze and a thaw. And do we have within our budget right now to repair as needed and mitigate all of what's already happening plus some, potentially?
So we do have line items where we have repairs accounted for with our contractor. The problem is that what Ms. Nardino has budgeted for, and I have budgeted for, it's impossible to predict how many repairs actually need to be conducted. The number has definitely significantly increased over the past 2 years, but we do have line items for that. Sometimes it's, when we have more repairs here, we have to defer some of the other projects that need attention, but we kick it out another year or so to make sure that we address the highest priorities.
We also have a maintenance reserve that we can tap into if
Yes.
we have to, and that's about 300,000, I think we talked about the unencumbered. So yes, we do have the funds to address emergencies like that come up.
But if the emergencies are more than 300,000.
Then we have a problem.
Then we have a big problem.
That was kind of the question.
Right, and then the other thing too is with these roof leaks, not only is it a roof leak, but it's damaging the walls in classrooms.
Right.
It's damaging materials that the teachers need to teach the children, so
It's a ripple effect.
it's a ripple effect. So it's not just, the roof leak, we gotta fix the leak. It's what the damage was done.
And we can't fix the inside until we fix the outside. So this is all encompassing. Any other questions from the public? Okay, well, we'll have plenty of other talks. If anybody has any questions in the meantime, feel free to shoot me an email. Yes.
Lynn Halsey, 53 Linden. So in the time that it will take, or hopefully for it to pass, what are we doing to make sure that children in assembly situations or lunchrooms, if there is some type of security issue between now and then, or, existing if it doesn't pass, is there a consistent process in place?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's an excellent question. We do have, our doors do lock. We do have safety procedures in those areas. In the areas where the doors do not lock, we have contingency plans where students will go to other areas. But what we wanna do is we wanna take it to the next level and have a standard that we expect in 2019, 2020. So if anybody has any other questions that come up, please feel free to email me. I'd be happy to answer those. We do have more talks, so we encourage you to share as much information as you can to the community, and thanks for coming out tonight.